قبل أن نذل ونخزى إلى أن انتهيت بالأمر إلى حبيبك ونجيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وآله، فكان كمن تجبته، سيد من خلقته، وصفوة من اصطفيته، وأفضل من اجتبيته، وأكرم من اعتمدته. قدمته على أنبيائك وبعثته إلى الثقلين من عبادك، وأوطأته مشارقك ومغاربك، وسخرت له البراق، وعرجت بروحه إلى سمائك، وأودعته علم ما كان وما يكون إلى انقضاء خلقك، ثم نصرته بالرعب وحففته بجبرائيل وميكائيل والمسومين من ملائكتك، ووعدته أن تظهر دينه على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون، وذلك بعد أن بوأته مبوأ صدق من أهله، وجعلت له وله أول بيت وضع للناس للذي ببكة مباركا وهدى للعالمين، فيه آيات بينات مقام إبراهيم ومن دخله كان آمنا. وقلت إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. ثم جعلت أجر محمد صلواتك عليه وآله مودتهم في كتابك، فقلت قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى، وقلت ما سألتكم من أجر فهو لكم، وقلت ما أسألكم عليه من أجر إلا من شاء أن يتخذ إلى ربه سبيلا، فكانوا هم السبيل إليك والمسلك إلى رضوانك. فلما انقضت أيامه أقام وليه علي بن أبي طالب صلواتك عليهما وآلهما هاديا، إذ كان هو المنذر ولكل قوم هاد، فقال والملأ أمامه من كنت مولاه فعلي مولاه، اللهم والي من والاه وعادي من عاداه، وانصر من نصره واخذل من خذله. وقال من كنت أنا نبيا فعلي أميره، وقال أنا وعلي من شجرة واحدة وسائر الناس من شجر شتى، وأحله محل هارون من موسى، فقال له أنت مني بمنزلة هارون من موسى، إلا أنه لا نبي بعدي، وزوجه ابنته سيدة نساء العالمين، وأحل له من مسجده ما حل له، وسد الأبواب إلا بابا، ثم أودعه علمه وحكمته، فقال أنا مدينة العلم وعلي بابها، فمن أراد المدينة والحكمة فليأتها من بابها. ثم قال أنت أخي ووصي ووارثي، لحمك من لحمي ودمك من دمي، وسلمك سلمي وحربك حربي، والإيمان خالط لحمك ودمك كما خالط لحمي ودمي، وأنت غدا على الحوض خليفتي، وأنت تقضي ديني وتنجز عداتي، وشيعتك على منابر من نور مبيضة وجوههم حولي في الجنة وهم جيراني، ولولا أنت يا علي لم يعرف المؤمنون بعدي، وكان بعده هدى من الضلال ونورا من العمى، وحبل الله المتين وصراطه المستقيم، لا يسبق بقرابة في رحم، ولا بسابقة في دين، ولا يلحق في منقبة من مناقبه، يحذو حذو الرسول صلى الله عليهما وآلهما، ويقاتل على التأويل، ولا تأخذه في الله لومة لائم، قد وتر فيه صناديد العرب، وقتل أبطالهم، وناوش ذؤبانهم، فأودع قلوبهم أحقادا بدرية وخيبرية وحنينية وغيرهن، فأضبت على عداوته وأكبت على منابذته، حتى قتل الناكثين والقاسطين والمارقين، ولما قضى نحبه وقتله أشقى الآخرين يتبع أشقى الأولين، لم يمتثل أمر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله في الغادين بعد الهادين، والأمة مصرة على مقته، مجتمعة على قطيعة رحمه وإقصاء ولديه، إلا القليل ممن وفى لرعاية الحق فيهم، فقتل من قتل، وسبي من سبي، وأقصي من أقصي، وجرى القضاء له بما يرجى له حسن المثوبة، إذ كانت الأرض لله يورثها من يشاء من عباده، والعاقبة للمتقين. وسبحان ربنا إن كان وعد ربنا لمفعولا، ولن يخلف الله وعده، وهو العزيز الحكيم. فعلى الأطايب من آل بيت محمد وعلي صلى الله عليهما وآلهما فليبكي الباكون، وإياه فليندب النادمون، ولمثل فلتذرف الدموع، وليصرخ الصارخون، ويضج الضاجون، ويعج العاجون. أين الحسن أين الحسين، أين الحسن أين الحسن أين الحسين، أين أبناء الحسين، صالح بعد صالح وصادق بعد صادق.
إن الله ملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وآله. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله اللهم صل على محمد أشهد أن مولانا عليا ولي الله اللهم صل على محمد أشهد أن مولانا عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وسلم اللهم صل على محمد وآله
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث السفراء الأكرمين، والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين سيدنا ومولانا وشفيعنا أبي القاسم محمد صلى الله على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الأطيبين الأنجبين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. أما بعد، أوصي نفسي وإياكم بتقوى الله. First of all, I advise myself, then all of you, towards taqwa, God consciousness, and remembrance of Almighty Allah Azza wa Jal. Today is 5th of Rajab, and according to one narration, this coincides with the auspicious birth anniversary of our 10th Imam, Imam Ali al-Hadi or Imam Ali al-Naqi alayhi salatu wassalam. Therefore, inshallah ta'ala, in this sermon we will be learning some aspects of the gracious life of our 10th Imam, Imam Ali al-Hadi alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. There is something really significant in regards with the childhood of Imam Ali Naqi alayhi salam. When Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam passed away, you know that he is the youngest Imam. I mean, he lived the shortest life, only 25 years. At that time, Imam Ali al-Hadi alayhi salatu wasalam was only 6 years old. And something unprecedented happened. Mu'tasim, the Abbasid king of that time, he decided to do something no one even thought of doing that before in regards with Imams. He asked one of his commanders to go to Medina. Imam Ali Naqi alayhi salatu wasalam was based in Medina, but Abbasid Caliphate and its capital city was Baghdad, Samarra, Iraq. For sometimes it was Baghdad, for sometimes it was Samarra. They kept switching. So he sent someone to Medina, and the task that man was assigned to find a tutor, a mentor, who had different school of faith, who had different ideology than Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam, and appoint that person to educate Imam Ali al-Naqi alayhi salatu wasalam. And in simple words, his sinister plan was to hijack Imam Ali al-Naqi alayhi salatu wasalam. He thought, oh, this family has a distinct ideology. They have different perspective when it comes to Islam, when it comes to our connection with Allah Azza wa Jal, and they are highly revered by the Muslim Ummah. So let's somehow dilute them in majority. And the best option is to work on their children. So he appointed someone to go to Medina and find out a learned person, and the condition is that learned person shouldn't be from the same school of thought, from the same ideology. It should be of ours. So he came to Medina and searched for such a learned tutor, and people pointed him to Al-Junaidi. He had all the qualities they were looking for. He was a learned person and he was from a different school of faith in line with the Caliph's school of faith. So they asked him, don't worry about your earning, about your salary. We are going to pay you a good amount of salary. Your job is to dedicate yourself to educate Imam Ali Al-Hadi, or Ali Al-Hadi. We are saying Imam, but they didn't recognize Imam, especially in that child. So this man started the job. And after a few days, before the person who was appointed by Mu'tasim to assign this task, before he left Medina, he met with Junaidi to check how the studies were going on, how the education or how the mentoring was going on. And when we talked about Imam Ali Al-Hadi's progress, he was surprised to hear from Al-Junaidi, how dare you can call him a child? He's not a child, he is a sheikh. Even though he's 6-year-old, but he's not a child, he's a sheikh. He's a learned scholar. And he said, in my whole life, I haven't met anyone who has more knowledge than this boy. People think that I'm teaching him, but honestly speaking, I'm learning from him. Whatever topic I start, he elaborates the way that no scholar from Muslim Ummah, even elderlies, they cannot talk about that the way he talks. So that was in fact the remark of Junaidi. And gradually he came to switch Imam Ali al-Naqi alayhi salatu wasalam to another school of faith, but he lost his own school of faith. And he became one of the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. So this is Imam Ali Al-Hadi Al-Naqi alayhi salatu wasalam's childhood. And there is no strange, and when we talk about these topics that at the age of 6 or at the age of 8, they became Imam, or they had so much knowledge and they were so sublime, some Muslims start showing some sort of peculiar remarks, or at least strange feelings that these people are weird and they don't know what they are talking about. There is only one difference between us and them. There is something really simple, but they fail to understand their simple point. And their simple point is, we never say that all these virtues or all these knowledge Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wasalam possessed by themselves. All their miraculous powers, all their knowledge, all their understanding, all their superiority, all their virtues, they came directly from Allah Azza wa Jal. If we say, for example, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam knew this and this and that, or Imam Ali Al-Hadi alayhi salatu wasalam possessed knowledge of unseen, we don't associate him with Allah Azza wa Jal. We don't associate him with divinity. We believe that Allah Azza wa Jal bestowed upon them this knowledge. Allah Azza wa Jal gave them this miraculous power. Isn't Allah Azza wa Jal ala kulli shayin qadir? Has power over everything? If Allah Azza wa Jal decides to give all the knowledge of the whole world to a mosquito, isn't Allah Azza wa Jal capable of doing that? Will you be surprised? If it is proven that Allah Azza wa Jal has chosen this mosquito or this fly for all the knowledge that Allah Azza wa Jal gave to all the messengers, just supposedly, will there be any kind of surprise? Of course not. Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. Indeed, Allah Azza wa Jal has power over everything. Of course, He's not going to choose a mosquito. Mosquito probably doesn't have that ability. But I just gave an example. So it is not an act of Imams alayhimu salatu wasalam. Miracles were not the acts of Prophet Muhammad or Imams alayhimu salam. They were in fact the acts of Almighty Allah Azza wa Jal. This is a simple logic. Unfortunately, a lot of people fail to understand that. And second thing I'd like to share from the gracious life of Imam Ali al-Hadi alayhi salatu wasalam, that Mutawakkil, when Mutawakkil became caliph after Mu'tasim, he was a really arrogant king. And he is called Yazid of Banu Abbas. He was even more evil than Yazid. So Imam Ali Naqi alayhi salatu wasalam was summoned. And he was forced to leave Medina and start living in Samarra. Samarra was called Muaskar. Muaskar means army base. So it was Abbasides' army base or garrison. And they made Imam Ali al-Hadi alayhi salatu wasalam to live over there so they can fully control him, control his activities, and also control all the people who were visiting him, who were writing him, who were in any way communicating with him. The situation was so dire that it is reported in history that people had a chance to have a glimpse at the radiant face of Imam Ali al-Naqi alayhi salatu wasalam only on certain days when he was summoned to the court of Mutawakkil al-Abbasi. So even though he was living in garrison, in army base, he was surrounded by army generals, he was surrounded by all the courtsmen, but still he needed to report twice a week. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. To Mutawakkil al-Abbasi himself. Why were the caliphs so much afraid of Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wasalam? Many times his house was raided. They searched the house. They didn't find anything at any point. But they kept raiding the house because they were afraid. Why were they so afraid of Imam Ali al-Naqi alayhi salatu wasalam? He was living an extremely simple life, a life of piety, a life of dignity. That's all. And in fact, that was the point. And that was the reason they were afraid of them. Because by leading that simple life, that virtuous life, that public life, that supportive and cooperative life, they won the hearts of people. And people really loved them. And that was a big risk for the tyrants. They wanted all the people to be connected only to them, not to anyone else. But unfortunately, they never thought of changing their lifestyles. If those caliphs started loving people, caring for people, supporting people, going extra miles to help them, support them, definitely they would win the hearts of people. But they didn't want to go in that way. Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wasalam, they lived with people with utmost dignity, at the same time with utmost generosity. And that attracted people towards them. And of course, their knowledge, their virtues, and all their excellent traits, they added upon that. One time, a woman came up with a peculiar idea, and she claimed that she was Lady Zainab salawatullah wa salamu alayha. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. And it was a kind of big noise and confusion for people. And people wanted to punish her for lying and for creating a kind of upheaval among people. Mutawakkil and Abbas Haid government, definitely they were afraid of Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wasalam, especially of Lady Zainab salawatullah wa salamu alayha, as she was eyewitness of all the incidents of Karbala, and she was claiming that she was Lady Zainab. She didn't die, she was resurrected, and Allah Azza wa Jal has sent her back to this world. So first of all, this was a kind of upheaval, and secondly, it could be a kind of potential risk for the government. So they got really sensitive on this topic. And they wanted to punish that lady. But she said, okay, if you want to punish me, prove me I'm wrong. And now they got stuck. They didn't know how to prove she was wrong. Eventually, they contacted with Imam Ali al-Naqi alayhi salatu wa salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Imam Ali Naqi alayhi salam said, it's extremely simple. Allah Azza wa Jal has made haram the flesh of prophets and their descendants, direct children. If she is saying that she is the daughter of Imam Ali alayhi salam, prophets, imams, and their direct descendants, flesh is haram on animals. Simply ask her to go to the dens of lions. There were lions, it was a kind of zoo. There were hungry lions. So Imam alayhi salatu wasalam proposed Mutawakkil to ask her to go to that lion cage or lion den. If a lion doesn't attack her, she is Lady Zainab, no problem. But if she isn't, then she would be devoured and everything would be finished with her death. So when this proposal was made to her, she got really afraid, and she started shaking and trembling and apologizing. Oh, I just came up with this peculiar idea. I just wanted to entertain, and I just wanted to somehow make a kind of joke. So the story was over. But Mutawakkil was very shrewd. He thought, okay, if that is the case, that Allah Azza wa Jal has forbidden the beasts to attack Prophet Muhammad and Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wasalam, or their direct descendants, then you yourself are from Ahlul Bayt. And now it's your time to prove that this theory is right. Imam alayhi salatu wasalam said, okay, no problem. And a ladder was set, and Imam alayhi salatu wasalam climbed through that ladder and entered in that arena where all the lions were kept. And then Imam alayhi salatu wasalam stood in the middle and raised his hands and prayed to Allah Azza wa Jal. All the lions and all the beasts came rushing towards Imam Ali Naqi alayhi salatu wasalam, not to attack him but pay tribute to Imam Ali Naqi. And now Mutawakkil was surprised. And it was time to somehow cover it up. Otherwise, Imam's excellence and Imam's fame and popularity will grow further. So he asked his people, all the people who witnessed this incident, you are not allowed to mention to anybody, at least in near future. So this is Imam Ali al-Naqi alayhi salatu wasalam. And I'd like to conclude by mentioning just another beautiful point from the gracious life of Imam Ali al-Naqi. This is really crucial and practical. It is reported that Imam Ali al-Naqi alayhi salam, despite being an Imam appointed by Almighty Allah Azza wa Jal, having all these excellences, definitely when he was in Medina, not when he was in Samarra. Imam alayhi salam lived altogether 40 or 42 years. And 22 years of those 40 or 42 years were spent in Medina, and the remaining were spent in Samarra. So when Imam alayhi salam was in Samarra, he was barred from everything, from all the activities, and he was kind of sentenced to life imprisonment. So he was literally living under house arrest. But when he was living in Medina, at some points, he was found working in his farmland, doing labor's job. And a person, when saw Imam Ali al-Naqi alayhi salatu wasalam in sweats and in hard works, he said, Yabna Rasulullah, you are such a prestigious person from descendants of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you have slaves at your disposal. Why are you working? This is something really low. You've been chosen for Allah Azza wa Jal for much greater tasks. Imam alayhi salatu wasalam replied to that person, there have been many people who are more virtuous than me, but they have worked this kind of laborers jobs, in laborers jobs. He said, who are you referring to? He said, my grandfather, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. And by mentioning this point, Imam Ali al-Naqi alayhi salatu wasalam drew our attention to something really, really important. And that is, don't undermine those people who do low jobs according to your calculations. No job is low job. You studied for example, 10 years, 20 years, you are graduate, you are sheikh, you are sayyid, you are a doctor, you have an office, you are an engineer, you have a firm, you have a company, you are sitting in your comfy chair and doing great jobs, using your mental ability, your studies. But those people who are working in farmlands, those people who are doing plumbing jobs, those people who are handymen, those people who are carpenters, painters, don't undermine them. Your job is important. Their job is no less important than your job. If it wasn't their contribution, you wouldn't be able to complete your studies in peace. You wouldn't be able to sit in your comfy chair, in your air-conditioned office, and doing your services. So don't undermine anyone's job. There is no low job. As long as whatever you are doing is haram, is halal, there is no haram ingredient in your job. Your job is utmost high in the eyes of Allah Azza wa Jal. This high and low job or profiles, these are just worldly calculations. They have no relevance when it comes to Allah Azza wa Jal's standards, when it comes to Rasul and Ali Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam's standards. Just imagine, if there were no farmers, if they were not growing the produce that we are eating, how would we be able to do whatever we are doing? I would be spending 4 or 5 hours to get, for example, some cabbage or some carrots or some banana. If I was supposed to be doing all the jobs by myself, then I wouldn't be able to study. I wouldn't be able to spend, for example, 16, 18 hours in Hawza Ilmiya. I wouldn't have time. So their job is equally important as my job. This is a very powerful lesson that we can learn from Imam Ali al-Naqi alayhi salatu wasalam's gracious life. وآخر دعوانا عن الحمد لله رب العالمين إن أحسن الحديث وأبلغ الموعظة كتاب الله عز وجل بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صلى الله على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. أما بعد، أوصي نفسي وإياكم بتقوى الله. Once again, I advise myself and all of you towards taqwa, God consciousness and remembrance of Almighty Allah Azza wa Jal. Just two quick masail before we go to salawat section. Number one, I've noticed that when someone is praying, people easily pass in front of that person, which is highly makruh in our fiqh. So if someone is praying, we shouldn't cross that person. If we have to, for example, if someone is praying here and I want to go that side, I shouldn't cross that person and go that way. I should go simply this way or this way. It's makruh. It's highly discouraged to cross a person who is praying. Number two, in regards with Ghuslul Jumma, this question Mu'mineen ask again and again, can I pray with Ghuslul Jumma? Yes, Ghuslul Jumma is highly recommended. And if you perform Ghuslul Jum'ah according to Ayatollah Sistani, Damat Barakatuhu, you are allowed to offer your Friday prayer, your Dhuhr prayer, and practically do anything wudu is required for. However, according to Ayatollah Khamenei, you are required to do wudu. And according to Ayatollah Sistani as well, it is mustahab that you do wudu. But wudu is not wajib. And another question, Friday ghusl is highly important. What is the timing for Friday ghusl? What time I can take the ghusl, take the bath for Friday, and that is considered ghusl for Friday, Ghuslul Jum'ah. So the time begins from Fajr time and it continues till Ghurub time on Friday. Okay? From Fajr time till sunset time of Friday. However, if someone missed due to any reason, there is an opportunity that that person can do Ghuslul Jum'ah as qada. It is so important that there is qada for Ghuslul Jum'ah. The person can do qada of Ghuslul Jum'ah from that time, from sunset of Friday till the sunset of Saturday. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا وشفيعنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. وعلى يعصب الدين أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. وعلى بضعة خاتم النبيين فاطمة الزهراء البتول. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. وعلى الحسن والحسين سيد شباب أهل الجنة. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. وعلى أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين زين العابدين ومحمد بن علي باقر علم النبيين وجعفر بن محمد الصادق الأمين وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم وعلي بن موسى الرضا المرتضى ومحمد بن علي التقي الجواد وعلي بن محمد النقي الهادي والحسن بن علي الزكي العسكري. اللهم صل على مولانا صاحب الزمان. اللهم صل على محمد. ماحي آثار البدع والطغيان هادم أبنية الشرك والنفاق حاسد فروع البغي والشقاق صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آبائه الكرام. اتصلت الليالي والأيام. اللهم عجل فرجه وسهل مخرجه واكحل ناظرنا بنظرة منا إليه وتفضل المؤمنات بمزيد التوفيقات وازدياد الإقبال وعلو الدرجات. اللهم افعل بنا ما أنت أهله ولا تفعل بنا ما نحن أهله بجاه محمد وآله المعصومين. إن الله يأمر بالعدل